This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system.
Are your SOPs tied directly to your cultivation plans? Can you easily manage your inventory and workforce and vendors from a single system? Or can you manage compliance across multiple licenses and states? If you answered no to any of these questions, then I suggest you stop what you're doing and call the team at Regrow. Compared to other software systems on the market, when you choose Regrow as a strategic business partner, you'll get all aspects of regulatory compliance built in, with the added value of workforce management, inventory, SOP management, and reporting and metrics that allow for companies to scale successfully. So if you're using whiteboards, spreadsheets, and email to manage your cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing processes, then it's a good time to consider incorporating Regrow. Visit their website at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Dennis O'Neill. He's the president at Biomedican. Hey, Dennis, how you doing?
I'm doing amazingly well, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. I'm excited to have you on today and talk about Biomedican's proprietary and patented method of producing non-GMO rare cannabinoids. You know, we've talked on this podcast quite a bit how rare cannabinoids exist in minimal quantities, and it's very expensive and difficult and inefficient to extract these cannabinoids from the hemp plant. And so it sounds like Biomedican has found a way to do that, a method that's been proven to be very efficient and cost effective. So before we dive into Biomedican and exactly that particular proprietary technology, Dennis, let's first get a sense of your background. So, what did you do prior to cannabis and what brought you to cannabis?
Sure. My background's over 25 years of investment banking. I helped start two of the largest regional investment banks in Chicago. And then I ran the SoftBank E2 Capital office in Chicago. SoftBank's the largest investment fund in the world. So I've raised a couple of $1 billion in early stage companies. I've run four companies at the C level. And now I'm considered to be an expert on venture capital, private equity, small cap stocks, and now cannabis. And I've spoken at over 75 conferences globally on these topics. So I've been with Biomedican since 2019. And we believe that this is going to be the next $1 billion plus company. So we're really, really excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with all your prior knowledge and experience and expertise on the financial side, entering cannabis, I know me being almost 2 years in, that learning curve is pretty steep. There's so much, right? The plan is so complex, not only from the science aspect, but, the history of prohibition and, the regulatory compliance that's now being implemented both at the state level and then now we're seeing at the federal level. So how has that learning curve been for you entering?
It's been really, really simple because I've been following this market for probably 15 years. Back in the day when all these cannabis grow operations were sitting on baskets full of cash and couldn't figure out how to get them into banks. We did these REITs to where that they, basically the grow operation and then the retail, whatever that they sold, that was exactly what the rent was for the month. And then they just went, they moved the money in through that way. So I've been following this in detail for a long, long time. What turned me off was that a lot of the operators in the space, especially in the beginning stages, weren't sophisticated operators. It was kind of a hodgepodge of different types of people. And I didn't feel for institutional type investors it was going to do well. And or at least it wasn't going to be accepted well by the large institutional investors. And then you had all the risks of farming, so there, it sounds good. You just stick a seed in the ground and out comes this great plant, and then you just harvest it. It's very, very complex, very, very difficult to consistently grow high quality cannabis.
Right. And so, as you were on the side of the REIT side, and you were seeing the industry from that purview, now as you've entered the space and growing a biotech startup, I mean, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned within this space thus far?
Well, there is a couple. I mean, obviously, first, what we looked at is that we looked at what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve within the cannabis industry, and what we realized was that, obviously, every plant, every season, the product ends up different, kind of like wine. You can't grow the same wine every year, so you have these variables out there. You have these risks of, that you have toxins, you have contaminants, you don't have, you have all these high risks then when it comes to going into the grow business. And I think it's fine to be in the grow operations if right now, if you're doing it for people who are going to smoke it or for CBD. But what we discovered is that there was a better way. I mean, that there were these rare cannabinoids that showed up in very, very, very minute amounts in the plant. And it wasn't going to be economically feasible to be able to harvest these and sell them at a reasonable price through cultivation. So we solved that problem by developing a biosynthesis platform to where that we can produce 99% pharmaceutical grade cannabinoids that are or bioorganic, non-GMO. We can do it. They're bioidentical to what occurs in nature. So there's absolutely no difference in any way, shape, or form. And what we're able to do is that we're able to do it. We're able to produce the same exact molecule or cannabinoid each and every time. So there's no variance. So for the large distribution companies, I mean, a lot of companies, outside of cannabis, there's a lot of people going into these markets now, which are consumer packaging companies, beverage companies, cosmetics companies, nutraceutical companies, and they need the exact same product each and every time. And we solved that problem, and we solved two other problems as well. One is that sustainability is a big issue right now. And we're able to produce these rare cannabinoids for 90%, utilizing 90% less energy and natural resources. And we can produce these rare cannabinoids at less than $1 a gram, which is, depending if you're talking about CBG or THCV or some of these other rare cannabinoids, that's anywhere from 70 to 90% plus cheaper than the large volume wholesale prices.
Right. So it sounds like really the value proposition is, the consistency of the product, the cost effectiveness, and the overall sustainability in which you do it. Right. And
Yeah.
from the website, when I looked at Biomedican's website, I saw that there's 3 different types of cannabinoid synthesis. You, at a high level, you mentioned the biosynthesis, but you also do grow, harvest method, and chemical synthesis. So do you want to talk about each of those?
Oh, well, actually, what we use that as a comparison compared to what we do.
Got
And
you.
basically, when you do a chemical synthesis, you end up with a GMO product. So it can't be organic. And then when you do the cultivation, you run into the issues that I just described. And the other part is that, you have all the risks of the farming, which, if you have wildfires or hurricanes or all the different things that can affect, a grow season, those are taken off the table with us. So what we're really looking to do here is that we're looking for the people that are growers and have large retail distribution. We're telling them, keep growing, keep producing CBD, but you can buy these rare cannabinoids from us, and then you can sell them into your large retail distribution, and you'll make more money. It'll be easier for you because we're a wholesaler. We're not in that retail space.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate you clarifying that. And so tell us what the benefits of non-GMO organic cannabis is, or what the benefits are compared to chemically synthesized compounds.
Well, a chemically synthesized compound means is that you're using very, very toxic chemicals to get to a place to where that you produce a cannabinoid. And typically what you end up with is that you end up with byproducts that are, toxins and contaminants that can be, that are known to be not good for the human body. So, anytime that you're talking, I mean, I think that almost all markets are trying to get away from these chemical synthetic type products because they're GMO. They are not good for the human body. And that at the end of the day, you end up with byproduct that is, yeah, you have a cannabinoid, but then you have all this byproduct that is harmful for you. And although that you can call it a cannabinoid, it's, the byproducts are, you know, potentially very, very damaging.
Right. Yeah, those byproducts can be harmful for sure. And when I'm looking on the website here, let's dive deeper into the specific rare cannabinoids that y'all focus on. I know that there's a tab for CBG and CBGA research,
Sure.
CBN, CBNA research, and then of course, anybody who's familiar with this industry and the plant at a high level, we know that there's over 100 different rare cannabinoids found within the plant that we know of, right? I mean, we only know of about maybe 20, but we know that there's over 100 that we're still learning about. So tell us a little bit about the research that I mentioned for those specific cannabinoids, and then maybe some other cannabinoids that y'all are researching that aren't prevalent in the market today.
Sure. I mean, what we're really focusing right now is on CBG, CBGA. It um, has some significantly better health benefits and more specific health benefits than CBD. It does show up in minute amount in CBD, but the main benefits is that it reduces. It's known to reduce pain and inflammation. It's good for treating IBS and inflammatory bowel disease. It decreases the ocular pressure in your eye, so it's good for um, glaucoma. It's also known to help with Huntington's disease. It helps fight the proliferation of cancer, and I mean, there's a multitude of other things that it is known to benefit. So CBG, CBGA, typically what people do with CBGA is they convert it into CBG, but there are a little bit different benefits for CBGA. Um, there has been 22 clinical trials on CBG. It was actually first discovered in 1970. So a lot of these studies were just phase ones that were done a long, long time ago. But now there's, I think, over 20 clinical trials going on, which we can go from making nutraceutical claims to where that it helps, with these conditions, and then pharmaceutical claims where it says it treats these conditions, and that's a major jump. The other one that we're really focused on right now is THCV and THCVA. There's a tremendous amount of interest in this, mostly because a lot of people are into this intermittent fasting now. And this is an appetite suppressant, so you don't get that irritability when you're trying to do intermittent fasting. It also regulates the blood. It's good for diabetes and obesity because it regulates the blood sugar and how it's intaked into the body. And one of the critical parts is that for people that take insulin, people end up with many people end up with insulin resistance within their system. So even when they take insulin, it's not acting or behaving or treating properly the patient. And this actually helps people that have insulin resistance to be able to properly process insulin. So it also does reduce inflammation. It's a bone growth stimulant, which is good for osteoporosis. It's known for, it's a significant reducer of anxiety. Many people take it for PTSD. And probably the biggest thing right now is, and there's some clinical trials going on, this is one of the few compounds that can bypass the cellular or membrane level of the brain. So it's known to help with Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's disease, which are, as you know, horrible, horrible diseases. Mm-hmm. And this, it's the research so far has been on Alzheimer's primarily, and it's there's been some significant results that have been seen so far with people using THCV for Alzheimer's. And our next generation of products that we'll be producing by the end of this year will be CBN, CBNA, and then THCA. And you can let me know if you want me to go, talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I would love to dive into those as well. But I mean, just to recap, so, you mentioned CBGA at first, and you mentioned that there's a minute traces of CBG in CBD, and I think also in THC as well. And I think that's where the name, the mother of all cannabinoids, came about, right? Yeah. Because without CBG, there would be no THC or CBD. So
yeah, for sure. The mother of all cannabinoids. Yeah. I missed that. Thank you for saying it.
No, of course. No, and that's right. And I'm just so fascinated by THCV in that, when you traditionally think about THC, you think about all the stereotypes, right? You smoke, you're kind of couch locked, and you get hungry, you get the munchies, right? And this plant is so amazing because it produces all these different cannabinoids, and THCV, it has a completely different effect than traditional Delta 9 THC, right? I mean, like you said, it's an appetite suppressant, and it can help with so many other ailments. And, you talked about how it can bypass the membrane. Like, to talk a little more about that and how it helps with Alzheimer's.
I want to clarify a couple of things here too, is that based upon our knowledge, there's over 200 known cannabinoids now. So that there is a big, vast universe out there. In fact, we've discovered a new class of cannabinoids called sesqua CBGA, which there's no research on right now. It has a lot of the same attributes as CBG, but it has some additional attributes that we think may provide significantly better health benefits than CBG. And we filed a patent on that.
Wow.
So the other clarification I wanted to make was that the CBG and THCV that we produce has 0.0% THC. So it has no psychoactivity in it in any way, shape, or form. And the products that we're producing, we use a specialized yeast. So it's called Yario leptolytica. And we take that through a biosynthesis process, which is water, sugar, Yario leptolytica, some DNA, and then we take it through a fermentation, kind of like brewing beer or something, but as a bioreactor. And then at the end of the day, we end up with, something that's identical to what happens in nature. So one of the huge advantages that we have is that all the regulations in the United States, state and federal, Canada and Europe, revolve around it. If you touch the cannabis plant or if you produce THC, you fall under their regulations. And because we do not touch the plant and we use a yeast and we produce 0.0% THC, we're outside the federal and state regulations. And what that means is that we can go into all these different markets that most people can't, which is nutraceuticals and cosmetics, and without having the burden of going through the federal and state regulations on cannabis.
Right. When you say 0% THC, how is that possible when THC is a naturally occurring compound in the plant?
Because we're not using the plant. And basically, we use this specialized yeast, Yario leptolytica, And there was just an article written on in Barron's last week talk about synthetic biology, that it's the next big universe of the world. It's probably bigger than the internet. And basically what you can do is you can program these yeast with DNA to produce, to do exactly what you want it to do at the end result. And so we program these yeast to be strictly CBGA, producing 0.0% THC. Now, if you're using the plant, it would be an impossibility.
Gotcha.
I've never heard of anybody been able to grow a cannabis plant without even a trace of, even hemp, without a trace of some type of THC. And that's what's exciting. We can produce THC, and we probably will do it because we have a distribution agreement in Mexico, because Mexico is legalizing it completely, cannabis. So we will be producing THC down there, but it'll be in a plant down there for distribution strictly in that market.
Got you. Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. So this proprietary oily yeast basically yields much more percentage of the weight in its oils, and then it's more of an efficient method in terms of microorganism for producing large amounts of targeted compounds. So like you mentioned,
Yeah.
CBG, CBGA, and this is, no one else is doing this. This is proprietary.
Well,
So
no, I mean, no, there's probably a dozen companies out there trying to do what we're doing. And some of them are getting some success at certain levels. But what we're able to do is we're producing significantly better results than anybody else in the world. And what it's called is that we're getting 5% dry cell mass yields. Everybody else in this space is getting 1% or less. And we're able to do that in less than 6 days. Most people are taking weeks or months to get theirs. So higher yields means significantly lower costs. So we'll be producing rare cannabinoids at less than $1 a gram. And the rest of the market we're anticipating will be between $5 to $12 a gram. So we think we're going to, I mean, if we're not the leader in this space, we'll definitely be one of the largest players in this space. And the biosynthesized cannabinoid market, according to the Raymond James analyst, by 2025 will be $25 billion. So this is one of the fastest growing markets in the world. And I think we're positioned to be a major player, if not the leader in the space.
and that $25 billion market for biosynthesized cannabinoids is separate from the legal market that's projected
Yep.
at 100,000, right? Because we're
Yep.
talking about
Completely separate. Yep.
right, because we're talking about synthesized cannabinoids versus
Yep.
naturally occurring.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned the benefits of synthesized cannabinoids when it comes to its cost effectiveness, its consistency, sustainability. Are there any drawbacks from synthesized cannabinoids versus naturally occurring cannabinoids?
No, I mean, the only thing one of the additional benefits is zero toxins, zero contaminants. So, as you know, the cannabis plant sucks all the toxins and contaminants out of the soil, and you have to go through the purification process and whatnot. I think that, obviously for anybody that's trying to do this is that, can you go into large scale production, keep the quality high, keep your costs low, and to be able to do it on a consistent basis. Now there's a couple of other companies that have gone into large scale production, but their technology is very, very weak. And they think that by just rushing to the market, that's going to win the day. And ultimately they're going to end up competing against people like us, that it's going to be a rude awakening for them to try to compete against somebody that has as good or better quality at significantly less costs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could definitely see the value proposition from a commercial manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
From a cost perspective, where do you see this playing out in terms of the end consumer, right? Like, where will there be dispensaries or pharmaceutical companies that focus solely on biosynthesized cannabinoids versus naturally occurring? Like, will they all play together in the same sandbox? How do you
Yeah, no,
envision
I
that playing
mean,
out?
yeah, yeah. And for the pharmaceutical side, I don't see them doing anything else besides biosynthesized cannabinoids because they can't run clinical trials based upon variants. And if in the cannabis plants and every season, every plant is different. So you can't have a variant and when you're doing clinical trials. So you need the exact same thing every single time. Now, as far as in the consumer market, I think that first and foremost, this will be a product that the CBD companies embrace. They add it into their CBD lines, or they develop additional product lines around these rare cannabinoids because they already understand the market. The CBD market's been growing by gangbusters. There are the top 10 or 20% of the consumers that are very, very educated that are looking for the next best thing. So they're natural partners, for distribution. From there, I think there is considerable amounts of interest in the consumer packaging good companies, adding it to granola, protein bars, cereals, cookies, any type of product that you can think of. And the beverage companies, like the Gatorades or anybody that has a beverage that is health conscious, it'd be easy for them to add this in, differentiate themselves into the market. And then, especially for CBG, there's a lot of skincare benefits for that. So that you got the cosmetics, and then as an afterthought, I think pet care. Anything that goes into the humans. If it's good for humans, it's good for pets because they basically give them the same medicine anyways. If you ever gave your dog, any type of medicine, it's basically human medicine, just giving it to an
Right.
animal.
To your
You know.
point, it's funny you bring that up because we recently had to take one of our dogs to the vet for a kennel cough, and our dog was prescribed antibiotics and hydrocodone.
Yeah. Yeah, and the antibiotics is exactly the same antibiotics you would take.
Right, and it was one day of her coughing. I'm like, I'm not sure if she needs hydrocodone
Joe
for
Cody.
this, but but you're right in that we are being prescribed like our dogs are getting the same treatment as humans at this point within our healthcare
Yeah.
system, which is kind of fascinating. But
Well, and as you know, people love their animals, and if they can help them, especially as you see them age, the pain that they go through. I mean, if you could give them something that would reduce inflammation and just help the animal, that pet owners will spare no expense to lighten the burden of pain and suffering for their animals.
Right. No, absolutely. And going back to your point about pharmaceuticals and how, biosynthesis will be their preferred method because of the accuracy and consistency of the product, that makes total sense. And also your point about, putting this compound within edibles, right? To ensure
Hmm.
that you have the right dose and the same amount and all
Hmm.
that consistency matters. But, one question is like in a more controlled environment, say like within an indoor grow, is it possible to avoid the variances and remain consistent as opposed to like growing outside or within a grow house? Like, is it even feasible?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have talked to probably a dozen guys that have basically did everything known to man to make everything absolutely identical in an indoor grow. Everywhere from the HVAC systems to the seeds to the fertilizers. I mean, they did absolutely everything scientifically possible to get an identical grow season, and it didn't happen. I mean, it was they tried it multiple times, and then they ended up giving up on it because it's kind of like it's like wine. If you could do that, if you had a great wine season, you would think that you could duplicate that, but you can't.
Right.
It's nature. Nature has variance naturally built into it.
That makes sense. And so, and switching gears a little bit and talking more on the financial market side of the house, which is, your kind of core
Yeah.
competency prior to being the president at Biomedican. So tell us, like, from someone that's just listening, who's new to cannabis, new to the market opportunity, what would be your advice to them, wanting to get started in investing in cannabis, especially in light of the new draft bill that has been presented last week by Senator Chuck Schumer?
Sure. And I've spoken to many senators. I'm on the uh, association in Chicago for self-regulation. But basically, I mean, I think that there's been wild swings within the cannabis markets, and I think what you really have to do is you have to look at the best operators, best execution. The people that can deploy capital and get returns on their money, which means that companies that are profitable within the space. If you're looking into the public markets, so I think that, and that is, basically you look at their profitability, earnings per share, if you're looking at a public stock. If you're looking to try to hit a home run or a grand slam, and you want to invest on riskier investing, which is new technologies that could possibly disrupt the future and become the next Amazons or Googles or something like that, I think companies like Biomedican, are probably where it's at. What we did, we've raised over $4 million to date, mostly from institutional investors. Or our largest investor is Eugene Fuchsman, which was one of the top executives at WhatsApp. And now we have Doug Hanna that just invested personally, and he's a partner of Silverleaf Venture Capital, which is probably the most active and successful venture capital fund in cannabis. So we validated our market. What happened is that we ended up probably with about 60 articles written on our company over the past 14, 15 months. And we received a plethora of individual investors interested in investing into Biomedican, but they weren't accredited, so we could not take their investment. So we're just about to open up tomorrow a small crowdfunding campaign for $1 million. That's the maximum. The minimum, I think, is 200,000, and that way you can do anywhere from $250 to some people have done $100,000 already reserved. And that way, if this is something that is of interest and you feel like you have the risk tolerance for it, you may want to check that out, Biomedican on Refunder. But we're just doing that because that they've supported us so much, given us all types of great feedback, and it's and typically these individual investors never get to invest in a company like us.
Right. And so what are the plans with those funds that are raised from that crowdfunding program? Like, what do you
we're going into large scale production early 2022. Ultimately, we're expected to go public sometime in 2022. Hopefully, we'll have some, it'll be at a significantly higher number than what we're raising capital at now. And, we are working on global distribution agreements, and there is, significant interest for what we're doing on a global basis, mostly because that, the markets that you can't get into because they ban THC, we can get into those markets because, we're not producing THC or touching the plant.
Right.
So our marketing is much more broad than your typical operator within the cannabis industry.
Got you. And then just to kind of close it out, we talked at a high level initially about, your advice for somebody entering the cannabis investing space. So are there any multi-state operators outside of your sandbox that you really like and are betting on?
Yeah, no, I don't give individual investor advice. I mean, basically, I just give the parameters of what you should look for and then do your own due diligence. Because if I'm not involved in those companies, I don't know how the execution is going to go. But I do know that if they have executed to the point of profitability, that's usually a good sign that they're doing something right. If they continue to lose money, at some point in time, they're going to run out of money, or they're going to continue to raise money. And typically that makes the stock go down. So look for profitable companies and that have good management teams. And I think that ultimately, and then typically a lot of these companies have analyst reports on them. So you can pull up the analyst reports and see what the analysts think.
Right. Yeah, no, fair enough. And a translation from Kevin, look at US MSOs, not Canadian LPs at this point. I said it, not you, so don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
no, I mean that's why it's that's why I don't do stock picking for cannabis, because number one is it is quite the roller coaster ride. It's the best of times or the worst of times. It's and maybe buy one that's way down, because typically they bounce back.
Right, exactly. Yes, that's good advice. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about, Dennis, or leave the
No,
audience with before
yeah,
we wrap up?
I'll leave you with this, is that we believe that we're creating a better tomorrow by being able to produce super high quality rare cannabinoids at really, really low prices that'll be affordable for the masses. What we have been able to do is leverage research partnerships with the Institute of Genetics in Moscow, Denmark Technical University, the Imperial College of London, and Delaware University to be able to develop the technologies that we've been able to develop today. So we've done a significant amount of progress with a very small amount of money in a very short period of time. So I think that's a recipe for success in the future. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, definitely off on the right track, and what you're doing is super innovative and important work that that will definitely be a big part of the industry in the future, Dennis. So, really appreciate your time today and the insights. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to learn more?
Sure, it's Biomedican at www.biomedican.com, biomedican.com. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. So you can pretty much find us anywhere, but I would recommend starting off with the website, because that encapsulates our story, and you could read the 50 articles that have been published on us to date, and they've been on Bloomberg, Forbes, Reuters, all the majors have covered us.
Perfect. And then last thing, you mentioned that crowdfunding site. Do you want to just throw that out there so if people want to be individual investors, they can find it?
Yeah, sure. It's WeFunder /biomedican.com, or you could just go on WeFunder.com and just search under Biomedican, Biomedican, and you can look at the campaign, and we have a lot of good information there as well.
Perfect. Awesome. And I'll be sure to add those links to the description box within the YouTube video so people
Okay.
can find it. Awesome. Well,
All
Dennis,
right.
thank you so much again. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And thank you all for listening.
All
Bye.
right. Have a great day. All right. Bye now.